Don't use the willpower to compensate for your lack of sleep. Use the willpower to get better sleep. The sooner that you stop doing that sort of thing, the happier you will be in the long term, I promise. This question comes from Darren, a 26-year-old computer science major. Hello. I have a recurring issue of burning out during my college semesters. Usually it happens around 70% of the way, but this semester it happened halfway and it was a much harder burnout than normal. It's been a problem for me since I started college. It's caused me to pretty much waste some semesters by having to retake the classes the next semester. I'm wondering if you can give any advice for dealing with and preventing burnout and also for being more productive and focused. Okay, so today we're going to talk about burnout. And before we get to solutions, we have to take a little bit of time to understand what burnout actually is. So this is not really like a clinical definition. This is honestly me just kind of winging it as I go. But my understanding of burnout is that it's basically a case of running out of motivation. You'll notice that this diagram is pre-drawn this time. That is because I tried to record this video, but I accidentally stopped recording halfway through. So now I'm just reshooting it. So this is you. You have a goal. And your goal, for example, could be to get a computer science degree. But the problem is that you have some obstacles in your way. For example, maybe you get sleepy and you don't want to study because you want to sleep instead. Maybe you really like video games and you play lots of video games and that cuts into your studying time. Maybe you're a big partier and you like to go out and party and that also cuts into your studying time. These are all obstacles that can get in the way and stop you from getting your degree. And the way that most students will try to get through those obstacles is through sheer willpower. They will push and push and push and eventually get through these obstacles and hope that they push hard enough and eventually get to the degree. Now that works up to a point. You can get through some obstacles with pure raw willpower, but it's generally speaking not the most sustainable way to motivate yourself. And you already understand this because you burn out part of the way through the semester, either 70% of the way or halfway through. You burning out is basically you applying willpower to get through these obstacles, but then running out of willpower. And of course, once you run out of willpower, you crash and burn right about here, halfway through the semester. So this obviously is something that we want to avoid. How do we do it? In order to understand burnout a little bit more, I like to use this kind of physics analogy. Don't be scared, it's simple physics. Let's say you have a big weight you're trying to move, like 100 kilograms, and you are trying to move it over some rough terrain. This squiggly line means that the terrain is rough, so there's a lot of friction, and therefore you have to apply a lot of force in order to get over it. And there's a limit here. You can only apply so much force, because your body is only capable of so much. If you apply too much force, eventually you're just going to break your back and you're going to have to go to the hospital. And this is kind of like what students are doing when they just try to apply more and more willpower to get through all of the obstacles. They're just pushing. They're just pushing harder and harder and harder, but eventually they're just not going to be able to do it because the box is just too heavy. You can't move it over this rough terrain. So what is the smart physics solution to this problem? Well, rather than applying more force to the box, what if instead we made the terrain easier to traverse? So for example, maybe we have like some oil lying around and we apply oil to the floor as lubricant that reduces the friction and makes it easier for the box to glide over. Or we apply wheels to the box. That's what these circles are. You apply wheels to the box and then you can roll it over the rough terrain without having to worry about it. Wouldn't that be easier? Wouldn't that be nicer than just pushing really hard to get through it? So that's physics. That's a pretty easy physics solution, but how do we translate this into the realm of mental health? The analogy is basically that instead of trying to push through these obstacles, we're going to try to remove them altogether. Now this can be kind of difficult because a lot of the times you don't even necessarily know what these obstacles are. So I'll give you some examples of what the obstacles could be, and we're going to come back and address these. But just to give you some examples, one example is that you don't enjoy the subject. You literally just straight up don't like it. This is something that people oftentimes don't figure out until they're halfway through their degree. They're studying computer science or, biology or whatever, and halfway through they're like, wait a second, I hate this subject. I don't want to do this. And that puts you in a tough spot for sure. Another thing could be your physical conditions. If you're not sleeping enough or you're not eating properly, like you're not getting enough protein and fiber, that makes it a lot harder to study because your mind will be distracted by thoughts of sleeping and eating. And again, the way students tend to deal with this problem is willpower. I am going to apply force to get through the obstacle of not sleeping enough, as opposed to, sleeping enough. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. The way that students think is, I'm just going to force my way through, not how do I get rid of the barrier to begin with. We're going to talk about how to remove barriers in a little bit. But again, in order to remove the barrier, first you need to understand what the barrier is. These are just examples. The barrier could be something very different for you. It could also be these things that are more complicated that we'll be getting to momentarily. Oh, I see. I copied this by accident. The reason why it's so difficult to figure out what the barriers actually are is because they're very subtle. They're things that happen over the course of a long period of time. And we know this because you've talked about it. Usually I get burnt out about 70% of the way through the semester or halfway through. There's not really like an event that's happening that's causing you to become burnt out at this time. It's just the accumulation of all of these little frictions over the course of several months. That effect is eventually stacking up and causing you to burn out. And again, if you're a student and you're preoccupied with your classes all of the time, it's really difficult for you to understand how all of these forces are interacting. How this small piece of friction that's been dragging at you over the course of the past 3 months is now causing you to burn out. That's kind of a difficult connection to make if you're not really looking for it. So what we're going to do is try to look for it. Number one way to deal with burnout is, first of all, try to start dealing with it before you actually get burnt out, because once you're actually burnt out, you have no choice but to rest. That's the only thing you can do, trust me. Ideally, what we want is to manage our emotional state properly so that we don't get burnt out in the first place. And that means noticing the signs of burnout generally like 2 or 3 months before they actually start to happen. And in order to do that, we need to get very, very good at introspecting. We need to be very good at reflecting on our emotional state before something terrible happens. But to give you an example that has absolutely nothing to do with my personal life, of course, hypothetically speaking, let's say somehow I have a crush on a girl. I know, crazy. It's been known to happen to me sometimes. And then I find out somehow through the grapevine that this girl that I have a crush on is dating another girl. Damn, that's so sad for me. So I mope about it, I'm sad about it, but I still have stuff to do. I have classes to study for, I have work to take care of, I have videos to record. So I sit down and I try to get some work done. But for whatever reason, I can't focus. When I sit down to try to write a script or take notes on a script, nothing happens. My brain is still distracted. I want to just go on YouTube, or I want to play video games. Or if I try to study, information is not being absorbed correctly, or I don't know how to like phrase things in my notes or whatever. The reason this is happening to me, of course, is because I found out that the girl I like is dating somebody else. But it can be hard to make that connection if you're not really looking for it, you know, because when you're trying to study, all you're thinking about is like the textbook that's in front of you. You're like, why can't I focus on the textbook? Why can't I do this thing that's in front of me? A lot of the times, the reason why you can't do the thing that's in front of you is because there's something else happening elsewhere in your brain, in your subconscious, that's stopping you, that's blocking you from doing it. What I would do in this hypothetical situation is maybe I would journal about it. Maybe I would write about this girl that I have a crush on and vent all of my emotions into my journal. And then once I'm done with that, then I can actually focus on studying. Or I might say, write a really sad song about it and then play it on the piano a couple hundred times over the course of the evening. And as I'm practicing it, I'm releasing more of that emotional energy out into the world. Speaking of which, I may be releasing music in the near future, as in the next 2 to 3 months. Keep an eye out for that. Or I might talk to a friend about it. At this point, all of my friends are sick of listening to me talk about girls I have crushes on, but every now and then, if it's really bad, I'll still bother them and be like, hey, can you listen to me just one more time about this? And they'll be like, all right, sure, one more time. The point being, you have to do something about that emotion. It's not going to go away on its own. You can suppress it for as long as you want, but everything that you suppress eventually becomes one of these obstacles that makes it harder for you to focus. And as you apply willpower to try to get over those obstacles, you will run out eventually and you will burn out. That's why students burn out all of the time. In order to solve burnout, the answer is to start reflecting on your emotions like 2 or 3 months before you actually get burnt out, at the beginning of the semester, ideally. So that's kind of like the general technique or principle. And now what we're going to do is apply it to some specific obstacles that I think are going to be very common for students. And that will kind of give you like a clue as to how you can kind of deal with things yourself. But remember, these obstacles may or may not apply to you. These are not necessarily things that are going on in your life. At the end of the day, it is up to you to do the work of introspecting and figuring out what your personal obstacles are and then clearing those out. That being said, let's get started. Obstacle number 1, lack of enjoyment. Sometimes when you pick a subject to study, it's something that you think will be interesting or, lucrative when you're like 17 or 18 years old, but you figure out later on in your college career, oh, I don't actually like it that much. And that obviously can be a very big complication if you're trying to get a degree. If you fucking hate the subject that you're studying, it's going to be really difficult for you to motivate yourself to study it. Most of the time, the advice people will get if they bring up this sort of thing is people will tell them to change their major. Study something that you love. Study something that you're interested in. And that kind of makes sense. I guess the most obvious thing that you could do. But I'll be for real with you. If you're looking to change your major from computer science to music, you probably shouldn't do it because it's really difficult to get a job in any music related field because so many people want to do it. And I think long term you will probably be less happy because the thing that was once your source of joy has now become like this burden that you have to carry for the rest of your life. So I don't necessarily think changing the subject is always the correct move. Sometimes it is, but not always. A less obvious solution that I don't really see people recommend very much is to find something interesting about the subject itself. This I think is highly underrated and something that I use successfully in most things that I do. So to give you an example, I am currently studying to be a paralegal. Technically I am a paralegal. That is one of the jobs that I have, but I want to get like a certification so I can get like a more official proper job. The law is kind of boring as it turns out. There's a lot of little details that you have to get right and keep track of, and it's a lot of words, it's a lot of reading, and I do like reading, but it's like reading dry legalese text. It's not fun. I would not call it interesting exactly. Again, the naive thing to do here is to quit the paralegal cert and go fuck off and do something else instead. The way I make it interesting for myself, I mean, to be honest, I already find it pretty interesting, but let's say I have to make it interesting for myself. One way you could make it interesting for yourself is to draw an analogy to something that you do really like. So for example, I'm really into chess. I love chess. And not to get like too bogged down in the details here, but there is an analogy between law and chess. Basically, every argument that you make in a court of law is kind of like a move on the chessboard. And then there's almost like a preset selection of moves that you can make in response to that are generally called defenses. I don't want to go on like a whole big rant about how the law and chess are the same. Maybe I'll do that in another video. But the point is, you can make things interesting for yourself by drawing analogies to things that you do like. That is a really powerful way to do it. Another thing that you might want to consider is maybe the reason why you are not enjoying something is because it comes attached with a lot of expectations, or you have a sense of identity that goes against this thing. So for example, a lot of people, and I'm talking about like most people in America, have internalized a sense of identity that they're bad at math. They do poorly in math class at some point in their lives, and then they just decide, you know what, I'm just bad at math. That is a thing that is true about me. And then they never really like analyze that critically. And then later, maybe they study biology and it turns out, oh crap, I need to know statistics in order to pass my bio courses. This assumption about myself that I'm bad at math, that becomes something that holds me back. And so one way you might be able to restore enjoyment in a subject is letting go of the sense of identity that you're bad at it, or letting go of the sense that you're letting go of the idea that it's outside of you, if that makes sense, or allowing that knowledge to be absorbed into you without some kind of judgment that you have for yourself. Another example is that maybe like a computer science major might kind of just like wash out of their literary courses or their arts requirements because they're like, I'm just not artistic. I'm just not a literary person. I'm just not an artistic person. I think that's honestly like a very naive way of thinking, that you just have like one thing that your brain is good at and you can never learn anything else. But people do this like all of the time. And I think part of the reason is that it's a really like safe way to exclude things you don't like from your life without actually having to confront like, you know, why it is that you do or don't like subjects, without having to do the work of integrating them into your identity, etc., etc. So anyway, point being, if you don't enjoy a subject, you can either A, track down why it is you don't like that subject and try to deal with it directly, or draw an analogy to something that is interesting to you. And honestly, if you do that enough of the time over the course of enough things, you can reach a point where pretty much everything is interesting to you, because pretty much everything you'll learn is like connected to this web of ideas that you all find interesting, which is pretty much what I do. And that's why I like learning so many different things. And like when it comes down to it, my real opinion on the matter is that most people can enjoy most things if they let themselves. I think this is a true statement, and people don't let themselves learn. They don't let themselves enjoy things for whatever reason. Maybe because they're lazy, or maybe because because they have a sense of identity that they're not good at it. But I think genuinely most people can study most things and be pretty okay with it. You may not be like naturally gifted at it, but you can do it. Next on the list, physical conditions. By physical conditions, I basically mean like your health, the physical state of being that you have. This is something that I kind of had to learn the hard way in college. Your diet and sleep have a very, very strong effect on your brain power. And so if you are like most students and you sleep for like 3 hours a night, or even like 5 or 6 hours a night, you are basically nerfing yourself. You're giving yourself a debuff that makes it harder for you to study. So you need to sleep. I'm sorry, I know you think that you're a legendary student who can sleep for 3 hours a night and still go to all your classes and still party and everything will be okay. You can't do it. Your body's not built for it, and you are destroying yourself over the long term. And if you're wondering why you burn out halfway through the semester, every single semester, this is why, because you're not sleeping enough. Same thing with food. You want to eat decently, and that can be difficult because nutrition is kind of a complicated subject. But generally speaking, you just want to do everything in your power to increase the amount of protein and fiber that you eat. Those are the two food groups that most people have trouble with. So you don't necessarily need to learn what every single macronutrient does. You don't need to take a multivitamin necessarily. You can if you want, obviously. You don't need to count calories. Just eat a lot of protein and a lot of fiber, and you'll probably be basically okay. I think another thing people get wrong about fixing their physical conditions, we've alluded to this with the sleep thing, is that they will apply willpower to get over the physical conditions themselves. So if you haven't slept enough, you will apply willpower to try to power through your lack of sleep. This is like a really backwards way of thinking that is obviously screwing you over the long term. So here's what I'm going to say to that. All of the willpower that you would apply to powering through your lack of sleep, apply it to getting enough sleep instead. You know, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to muster up all of my willpower to get through like this 6-hour study session the night before a test at 3 a.m. Instead, take that same willpower and say, okay, 3 weeks before the exam, I'm going to use this willpower to stop myself from playing video games when I should be studying, or to put down my phone and stop doom scrolling on Instagram when I should be studying or sleeping. Don't use the willpower to compensate for your lack of sleep. Use the willpower to get better sleep. It's kind of like, I guess, the boring adult solution to your problems, but I mean, the reason why boring adults do these boring adult things is because they work. Like, I'm sorry, the self-destructive nihilism that you learn to love as a college student, it doesn't actually serve you very well in real life. And the sooner that you stop doing that sort of thing, the happier you will be in the long term, I promise. And this principle applies to diet as well. If you have like brain fog because you've been eating, you know, like McDonald's hamburgers, actually, that's not even that bad. If you've been eating like ice cream for every meal for the past week and you have like brain fog because of that, don't use the willpower to push through the brain fog you have from eating ice cream for every meal. Use the willpower to put away the ice cream for once and then eat like, you know, some chicken thighs and like broccoli or something. Even like fruit, like apples and bananas, two fruits that I really like, because they're cheap mostly. Just anything that is healthy and anything that will fix your bowel movements and, you know, get enough protein, etc., etc. Don't use willpower to compensate for your physical shortcomings, as in like your physical circumstances. Use them to make your physical circumstances better. Trust me. The last thing I'm going to say is that I'm not really the right person to ask about sleep things because my sleep schedule is insane. Literally today, I think I slept for like 5 hours from like 12 p.m. to like 5 p.m. It's pretty bad. I sleep all over the place. However, the reason why I do that, and I promise I'm not making this up, is because I genuinely work better and focus better if I just sleep whenever I want to and then get the work done. Like at time of recording, it is 10 p.m. So I should wrap up before I, you know, bother my neighbors too much. But I genuinely work better. Like you can actually tell, like I'm very fresh and awake right now at 10 p.m. because I fucking slept for 5 hours earlier today. So I've kind of like learned over time that if I try to force myself to sleep at quote unquote correct hours, I will actually feel worse and be less productive versus if I just kind of sleep at random times and then work immediately after I sleep. So I do like a weird sleep schedule because, you know, I've inspected my own emotions and been like, this works for me. This genuinely is like the way for me to be the most productive. And if you're in college, you do have a bit of freedom here because your classes will be from like, I don't know, 12 to 3 or something. You can sleep from like 4 p.m. to like 8 p.m., study from like 9 p.m. to like 3 a.m., then sleep again from like 4 to fucking like 7 a.m. or something like that. Like, I don't know, you can make it up as you go. You can improvise it. This is not normal. This is not really the way most people live their lives, but I'm just throwing it out there because it is what I do. And if it does work for you, just go for it, I guess. Obviously, when I get an actual real job, I may need to change that. Another thing that that may be causing your burnout is competing responsibilities. So, for example, let us say that you are a computer science major and you are also like a president of the chess club, for example, because I think about chess a lot. And because you are president of the chess club, you have a lot of stuff to do. You have to go to board meetings. You have to organize tournaments. You have to like go and recruit players. You have to decide on your market strategy for the semester. You have a lot of stuff to do. What could be happening is that over the course of trying to manage both of these responsibilities, both being a computer science major and being president of the chess club, you just have too much on your plate and you get burnt out because you're spread over too many things. In situations like this, I hate to say it, but I really do think the only way through is just to reduce the amount of stuff you have to do. So maybe you step back from being president for a little while to focus on studying. Partying also kind of falls under this example, where like, yeah, you want to go to your parties with your friends all the time, but if you actually want to get through the semester, you kind of just have to stop partying because it's just cutting too much into what you're doing. Something that I've noticed over the years of having burnout and depression in various forms is that there's a temptation, I think, to almost like hoard things as things start falling apart. If you kind of feel yourself getting depressed or burnt out, the temptation will be to say, I don't want to let go of like the chess club, or I don't want to let go of the partying, or I don't want to let go of like this social thing I'm doing. I want to hold on to all of these things and grab them and hold them close to me. And I'm going to squeeze really tightly and hold on to them. And what ends up happening is that this holding on to it and squeezing is draining all of your willpower, like we've been talking about. You use up all of your willpower trying to hold on to everything, and then eventually you burn out and all of it you just lose at the same time. And that sucks. So you really kind of have to fight that instinct to grab and hold on to things in your life and instead kind of just like let things that are less important drift away as you're getting burnt out. Like I socialized very, very little in my last 2 years of college. It's partially true. I would say my junior year mostly. Senior year, I started to kind of like get more energy, I suppose. But definitely in like my sophomore and junior year of college, I skipped out so many things. I didn't really go to a lot of parties. I didn't really hang out with that many friends. And it's because I knew that like I only have so much mental energy in order to deal with my problems. And I need to focus as much of it as possible on just studying, doing all of my readings, writing my essays and all of that stuff. And it sucks. It sucks because you can feel like these opportunities slipping away, like your friends getting more and more distant. These memories that you would be creating, they don't actually get created. It does suck and it's kind of painful, but you really have to ask yourself, like, what is more important to me? Hanging out with my friends tonight or finishing my fucking degree? That's kind of what it comes down to. And one thing I will add is that most of the time, the things you let go are things you can come back to later, another day. There will always be another party. There will not always be a chance for you to hang out with your friends. If you got to lock into study and you have to let go of some stuff, let it go and come back for it later. Almost always, you will be okay. The last big obstacle I want to talk about is kind of like societal expectations or judgments on you. And this is something that is difficult. This is probably the hardest of the obstacles we're going to talk about today, because what people think of us, especially important authority figures like our parents and professors and stuff, that has a really, really powerful impact on our lives. And you can really spend like years and years of therapy just trying to unravel the consequences of all of those expectations that were on you since you were a kid. So we talked about this a little bit in the previous video that I just made about dealing with, what was that video about? Gifted child syndrome. That's right. So we just talked about this in the video about gifted child syndrome, where in order to kind of keep moving forward in life, eventually you have to stop being motivated by praise and instead find an intrinsic motivation to move forward, which is kind of like the same principle that's going on here. The thing that I'm going to add on to that is that the problem fundamentally with societal judgment is that it's not just the judgment itself, it's also the praise that's the flip side of the judgment. These are two sides of the same coin. If you are somebody who can be motivated by praise, if you are somebody who is motivated by the respect and admiration of your peers or compliments from your parents or your professors, you are also someone who is vulnerable to being paralyzed by their judgment because you are dependent on their praise to elevate your mood. Does this make sense? Like, they're two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. are. If you are the kind of person whose opinions can affect you, then both the good opinions and the positive opinions will have that effect. And so if you want to stop suffering from people's expectations and judgment, you also have to stop benefiting from their praise. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to detach entirely from any input people give you at all altogether, but you do kind of have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because people around me will compliment me if I do it? Or am I doing it because I genuinely care about the subject? Or not even like you care about the subject necessarily, but you care about getting a fucking job after college. The way that I like to navigate that balance is by interpreting other people's opinions as data, not the truth. If somebody gives me a compliment on like some music that I write or some writing I do or a video that I make even, that's just data. It doesn't mean that the video is good. It doesn't mean that the song is good, but it does mean that somebody liked the video, or it does mean somebody liked the song. And so I don't really like depend on what people think about me to make my decisions, but I do evaluate based on that. Like if I get a lot of feedback that a video is bad or a lot of feedback that a song is bad, then I'm like, oh, okay, let me look at it and see what I can do better next time. But at the same time, if people compliment me, I don't think to myself, this is perfect, nothing needs to change, it's great. I tell myself, okay, I did something right for sure. Let me figure out what I did right, but let me still also think about what I could have done wrong. So anyway, detaching from people's opinions of you, that is kind of how you deal with the societal expectations / judgment thing, which is difficult. And you can spend many, many years trying to figure it out. But this is kind of like a seed that will hopefully move you in that direction later on. So let us summarize everything that we talked about today. Burnout. Burnout is running out of motivation. The reason why you run out of motivation is because you have these obstacles in your way and you try to push through them. You try to apply willpower to get through the obstacles. And eventually, of course, you're going to run out of willpower because your body can only produce so much force to get through it. So rather than try to apply more force, instead find ways to reduce the friction. In a physical sense, applying lubricant or by just using wheels. I kind of gave you some notes and some strategies for ways that you can deal with some of the most common obstacles, but I do just want to reiterate, this is ultimately up to you. The things that are obstacles for you, the things that are causing you friction are personal to you. You are the person who knows what's going on in your life the best, and you are the only person who's really equipped to do the digging, figure out what those obstacles are, and solve them yourself in whatever way is appropriate for you. I can help, I can get you most of the way there, maybe I can take guesses as to what's going on in your life, but it's up to you. You're the only person who can solve your own problems. So thank you so much, Darren, for writing in. Let us know in maybe like a month or two how things are going after we've gone through this little talk. And I hope this was helpful for you. And I hope this was helpful for everybody watching. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Do you have a question that you want answered? Check the comments for a link to a Google form where you can submit your own questions.